going to talk you through how to attempt this paper, which is paper 1 FR from November 2020. So question 1, here is a shape made of squares. Shade 1/6 of the shape. So I can see that there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times 3. There are 18 squares altogether. So for 1/6 of that, that means I'm dividing by 6. So 18 divided by 6 is 3. So I'm going to shade 3 squares. You might have been able to see that by seeing that I can split this into 6 rectangles going down, and I can shade one of them, which is those 3 squares. So either way would work. Part B, changing 19/5 into a mixed number. So I'm thinking, how many 5s are there in 19? So 19 divided by 5, and that will give me 3 as my whole number, and that's 3 5s are 15, so there's 4 left over, so 3 remainder 4. What does that look like then? 3 is my whole number, 4 left over, so as a fraction that's 3 4/5. You can also put that 19/5 into your calculator, and if you use your fraction button and put in 19/5, it will give you that answer of 3 4/5. Part C, 7/11 of a class walk to school. What fraction of the class do not walk to school? So that is what is left. So you're going to do 1, take away 7/11, and again you can use your calculator to do that, which will give you an answer of 4/11. If you want to see what that looks like, if you've got one whole split into 11, then you'll have 11 pieces. If we do it into a rectangle, there's my 11 pieces. 7/11 walk to school, so 7 of them walk to school, which leaves me with 4/11 left. A fraction that is equivalent to 7/9, so that is a fraction that when simplified would give you the same as 7/9. So one option is just to times the numerator and the denominator by 2. So I get 14/18. But I could times my numerator and denominator by any number so long as it's the same. So I know one of you got 70/90 because you times them both by 10. I could have 700/900. It doesn't matter so long as I times the numerator and the denominator by the same amount. 0.03 is a fraction. Again, you can pop it into your calculator and it will give you the answer. But if you go back to what do your columns mean, then this column is our tenths column and this is our hundredths. So we've got a 3 in the hundredths column. So we have 3 hundredths. And that doesn't simplify. And again, you could pop it in your calculator to check. On to question 2, which is about a pictogram. So we've got the number of eggs laid by Ellie's chickens in April, May and June. And it tells us down the bottom here, we've got this key which says that this rectangle represents 24 eggs. Now this rectangle has 6 parts to it. So each of those parts, if we do 24 divided by 6, each of those parts must be 4. So we know that each of these little bits is worth 4. So part A asks us how many eggs were laid by Ellie's chickens in April. So if we look at April, we've got one complete rectangle, which we know is 24. So we don't need to add those up. We've got 24 there. And then we've got 4 of those little ones, which are 4 each. And 4 4s will give me 16. So if I do 24 plus 16, that gives me an answer of 40. So the answer there is 40. Part B then says Ellie's chickens laid more eggs in June than in May. How many more? You can either actually work out how many eggs they laid in May, how many eggs they laid in June, and the difference, or you can actually just look at the picture first of all to see what the difference is. So the extra ones that were laid in June are these ones that I'm shading in blue now. So I've shaded 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and we know that each of those little ones is worth 4, so 36. So she laid 36 more eggs in June than in May. And then part C, in July, they laid 52 eggs. So we need to know how many of those little things that are worth 4 we're going to have to use. So if we do 52 divided by 4, that gives me an answer of 13. So I need 13 of those little rectangles, and we also know that a big rectangle has 6 in it. So I'm going to end up with 2 of the big rectangles, because that gives me 12, and then 1 little rectangle left over. So I should draw that ideally in the July box. So we said that's 6, that's 12, and then 1 little one left over. Question 3. Congruent. This is the word that's caused us a problem. Congruent means exactly the same. Same shape and the same size, but it could be turned round. So for instance, this triangle and this triangle would be congruent because they're exactly the same shape and exactly the same size, but this one that I've put a number 2 in is turned round from the number 1. So the two shapes here, which are exactly the same, are shape A and shape D, because they've got a square with a sticky out bit. Yeah, B and E look very similar, but E is a little bit longer, and then B and C look quite similar, but C is a bit longer across the top. And then part B is asking us to draw a shape that is similar but not congruent to B. So similar means the same shape enlarged. So that means every side must be a certain number of times bigger. So with shape B, what I would be doing is I'm going to multiply each side by 2. So in shape B at the moment, it goes across 2. So I'm going to make it go across 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And at the moment it goes down 3. So I'm going to make it go down 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It then goes along 1. So I'm going to make it go along 2. It goes up 2. So I'm going to make it go up 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then you can probably see how it's going to finish, but it goes along 1. So I'm going to make it go along 2. And it goes down 1. So I'm going to make it go down 2. So there is my similar but not congruent, because it's been enlarged by double, by twice. And then part C, shapes that have 6 sides are called a hexagon. Spelling is not important, but it's just knowing it's a hexagon that's the important thing there. So moving on to a question about probability. There are 12 beads in a bag. 6 of the beads are green, 4 of the beads are blue, 2 of the beads are pink. Peter takes a bead at random from the bag. Circle the word in the list below that best describes the likelihood that the bead is green. So if we have our bag, we've got 6 green. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We've got 4 blue. 1, 2, 3, 4. That probably would be more sensible to write with B for blue. Let's try that again. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 2 of them are pink. So there's my P for pink. The likelihood the bead is green. Well, exactly half of the beads are green because there are 6 greens out of 12 altogether. So that's evens. There's a half chance, an even chance that it's green. Part B, on the probability scale, mark with a cross the probability it is orange. There are no orange beads, that's impossible, so it's got to have a probability of 0. It has to be down there. And then part C, mark with a cross the probability it is blue. Well, 4 out of the 12 are blue, which is the same as, if you look at how many this is split into, it's split into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pieces. So if I wrote that as a fraction with 6 on the bottom, I've had to divide by 2 and divide by 2. So 2 out of 6. So my probability that the bead is blue is there for 2 out of 6. The probability that it is green or pink, well, that's the rest of the beads. So if it's not blue, it has to be green or pink. So if 2 out of 6 were blue, then 4 out of 6 have to be green or pink. So that will be that one there. So question 5, we are on simplify, and we've got W added together 5 times. So that will give me 5 W's. Part B, simplify 4 times A times 2. So we can look at the number parts, and we can do 4 times 2 is 8. So I have 8A. Now on part C, when I'm multiplying, that's going to give me a power for my letter, and I've got 5 of them. So F times by itself 5 times will give me F to the power 5. On part D, so I've got C's, a 4C and a 5C. And then I've got a 4H and a minus 6H. So if I add my C's together, 4 plus 5 gives me 9C. And then if I add my H's, I've got 4H take away 6H's. So 4 take away 6 is minus 2. So that will give me minus 2H. So factorise is finding a number or a letter, in this case a number, that goes into 10 and 5. So 5 is the number that goes into 10 and 5. I'm going to write this way. And then how many 5s are there in 10D? There must be 2D, because 5 times 2D. So this 5 times 2D gives me 10D. And then how many 5s are there in 15? There are 3. So when I factorise it, I have my 5 outside the bracket, and then I've got 2D plus 3 inside. Now part F is particularly tricky. This is definitely a grade 5 question, where it says make T the subject. Making T the subject means rearranging so that we get T equals. That's what we want to end up with. So if I'm starting with E equals 7T plus G, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to subtract the G from both sides, because I want to get the T's on their own. So on the left hand side, that leaves me with E take away G, and on the right hand side it leaves me with 7T, because G take away G is 0. If I've got 7 T's and I want to get 1 T, I have to divide by 7. So I'm going to divide both sides by 7. This side is straightforward, it gives me T. On this side, I've got E take away G all divided by 7. So my answer will be T equals E take away G, all divided by 7. So that one is hard. We'll give that one a little mark to remind us that that one was tricky. Question 6. Candles cost £3.05 each. Theo has £30 to spend on candles. He buys as many candles as he can for £30. Work out how much change Theo should get. So if we do £30 divided by £3.05 on our calculator, that will tell me how many candles I can buy. So that will give me 9.8. So I can buy 9 candles because I don't want 0.8 of a candle. So I'm buying 9 candles. So 9 candles is going to cost me 9 times £3.05. And if I pop that into my calculator, it will tell me that's £27.45. Now my question asked me how much change I should get. So I've got to do £30, take away my £27.45, which again I can plug in my calculator, and that will give me £2.55 as the change that I will get. Question 7. I've got 4 parcels, and I know that all together they weigh 8.3 kilograms. The weight of parcel B we know is 3.2 kilograms, so this one here is 3.2, and all the A's are the same. And we're asked to work out the weight of each of the parcels labelled A. So if I take away the weight of parcel B from the total weight, that will give me what my A's are, and then I can find out what 1A is. So if I do 8.3, take away 3.2, that gives me 5.1 kilograms, and that's for 3 A boxes. So to get 1A, that's going to be 5.1 divided by 3, which will give me 1.7 kilograms for an A. Now I've got parcel C and parcel D, and this time the total weight is 9.45 kilograms. Again, the 2 D's have the same, and it tells me that the weight of each parcel labelled D is 3 times the weight of the parcel labelled C. So if we said that the weight of parcel C was X, then parcel D must weigh 3X, and this parcel D must also weigh 3X. So the total weight of all 3 parcels is X plus 3X plus 3X, and that we know has to equal 9.45 kilograms. So if I add my X's all up, 1 plus 3 gives me 7X, is 9.45 kilograms. So to find 1X, I'm going to divide both sides by 7. And if I do 9.45 divided by 7, that gives me 1.35 kilograms. Question 8. There are 150 people at an international conference. These 150 people were asked to say what their main method of transport was to get to the conference. And this two-way table shows us some information. So we've got men and women down the side, and then bus, train and plane along the top, along with totals. And we need to fill in our missing numbers. So there are two that we can fill in immediately. We can fill in this one and this, three and this one immediately. If we look at this one, which I'm going to put in little number 1, that's how many people got the bus. So in total, there were 29 people who got the bus. 17 of them were women. So if we take 29 away from 17, we get 12. So there must be 12 people who were men who used the bus. If we put a little 2 here, so this is total people going to the conference. There were 150 people in total. 80 of them were men. So if we do 150 take away 80, that gives me 70. So there must be 70 women who attended the conference. And then if we put our 3 here, we know that the total of buses, trains and planes must equal 150 because that's how many people went there. So if I do 150, take away the 29 people on the bus, take away the 43 people on the train, that will tell me how many people went on a plane, which is 78. So this number is now 78. So there are now 2 more numbers I can fill in. I can do this one and I can do this one. It doesn't matter which order you do either of those in, but I'm just going to do this one first. So I'll call that one number 4. So now I can fill in the number of women on the train. There were 43 people on the train altogether. So if I take away the 15 men who were on the train, then I get 28. And actually that one should be a yellow one. I could always have done that one. So let's colour that one in yellow. We should always have been able to do that one. But this one up here, number 5, we couldn't finish until we'd worked out how many men were on the bus. So this one is telling us how many men were on an aeroplane. We know how many were on the bus. We know how many on the train. So for number 5 down here, we're going to do 80, take away 12, take away 15, which is going to give me 53 men on a plane. And now I can fill in this last one, which is how many women were on the plane. And I can do it in 2 ways. I can either find out just looking at the planes, or I can look at the women, but it's slightly easier to look at the planes because there's less numbers. So I'm going to say there were 78 people on a plane altogether. Take away the 53 who were men. That leaves me 25 who were women. So there's my filled in 2-way table. It then says one of the men is selected at random. So we are now only interested in these people. We're not interested in the women, unfortunately. They don't count. It's only the men that we're interested in. Right, that's so we can see it. There we go. The probability that this man's main method of transport was train. So the number of men who got the train were 15. So the answer is going to be 15 out of the 80 men that there were in total, which simplifies down to 3 over 16, but it's absolutely okay if you leave it as 15 over 80. You don't have to simplify it. But the key thing for that one is it's out of 80 because it's only the men we're interested in. Number 9, we're filling a box with cartons. So we've got a big box, which is 60 centimetres by 48 by 40. And we've got our little cartons, which are 4 centimetres in every direction. The number of cartons that can completely fill the box. So how many cartons can I fit in along this side? If I do 60 divided by 4, that gives me 15. So I can get 15 cartons stacked along that way. How many cartons can I get stacked along the bottom edge going backwards? If I do 48 divided by 4, that gives me 12. So I've got 12 there. So if you could imagine seeing the bottom of the box, then I've got a lot of little cubes that you can see. That would be what it would look like, looking like a bird's eye down on the bottom, if you were imagined looking down there. But then I've got layers, and how many layers can I fit in? Well, that depends how many 4s I can stack up into 40. So 40 divided by 4 gives me 10. So I can fit 10 layers up this way. So to find out how many cartons altogether, I'm literally going to times those 3 numbers together. Which gives me 1,800. Number 10, we've got a square and isosceles triangle. So the thing about a square is all the same sides are the same length. And for an isosceles triangle, the 2 sides that they've shown you with these little lines on here are the same length. Yeah, so those mean that those 2 sides are the same. The perimeter of the square is equal to the perimeter of the isosceles triangle. So this line is really important. Perimeter is all the way around the outside. So the perimeter of the square is going to be 6 plus 6 plus 6 plus 6. So 24 centimetres. So we know that the perimeter of the isosceles triangle is also 24 centimetres. If I call these 2 sides x because they're the same, then x plus 6 has to equal 24. X plus x gives me 2x plus 6 equals 24. I'm going to take away 6 from both sides because that's how I solve my equation. So I get left with 2x equals 18 and then divide by 2, so x equals 9. So I now know that the sides of those longer sides of that isosceles triangle is 9. So the perimeter of this shape, so that's a 9, 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 and then this is part of the square, so that's a 6. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 9s plus a 6. And if you plug that into your calculator, that will give you 60 centimetres as the perimeter. But it's making sure that we read that middle line that tells us that those perimeters are the same, which is really important. Number 11, drawing a graph. So we need to draw ourselves a little table of values. And I've got an x and a y, and it tells me to do values of x from -1 to 4. So I've got -1, 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And y is 3 x's take away 2. So what we could write is y equals 3 times whatever x is take away 2. So in the case of this first one, it's 3 times -1. And you can literally plug that into your calculator and you'll get an answer of -5. And then you can keep plugging that into your calculator and changing that value change it to a 0, and you'll get an answer of -2. You can change it to a 1, and you'll get an answer of 1. You can change it to a 2, and you'll get an answer of 4. You can change it to a 3, and you'll get an answer of 7. You can change it to a 4, and you'll get an answer of 10. Okay, so that's literally by using your calculator. And then you're going to plot these points with a pencil and a ruler. Okay, this is really, really important that you use both of those. So when x is -1, to make mine a bit smaller, when x is -1, y is -5. When x is 0, y is -2. When x is 1, y is 1. When x is 2, y is 4. When x is 3, y is 7. And when x is 4, y is 10. And then you are going to use your ruler to join those up with a straight line. Okay, that's really important that they are joined up. You need that joining up to get the last mark. Okay, so with those 3 marks, that 3rd mark is actually coming from joining those points up. So sets. Remembering that this funny symbol is the universal set, or the whole thing. And I would literally write all my numbers out because it's easier to make sure you've included all of them. So the universal set is all the numbers from 1 up to 15. And it's worth taking the time to do that. A is even numbers. So those are our numbers in our 2 times table. And B, they've given us those numbers in the 3 times table. So 3, 6, 9, 12 and 15. And we've got to fill in our Venn diagram. So in this middle bit is the numbers that are in A and B. So if you look at A here and B, I've got 6 and 12, which are in both. So 6 and 12 are going in the middle. Anything else that's in A is just coming here. And anything else that's in B is going there. So I've used 2, 3, 4, 6, 8, 9, 10, 12, 14 and 15. So the numbers that I've got left that I haven't used so far are 1, 5, 11 and 13 and 7. I missed it out. So those numbers 1, 5, 7, 11 and 13 are fitting around the outside. You need all of those numbers in there in order to score your full marks. Which is larger? So 32% of 450, you're going to use your percentage button and you're going to write down the answer to 32% of 450, and that's 144. I have to see that. And then you're going to use your fraction button to write down what 2/5 of 375 are. And then I know that 150 is bigger than 144, so I can either put a circle here or I can say 2/5 of 375. If I didn't do any of this working here and all I did was write down my answer, I wouldn't get anything. I have to show the 144 and the 150 to be able to get any marks for that one, because it specifically says you must show your working. Okay, that's really important. Question 14, lowest common multiple. The easiest way to do these questions is to do a Venn diagram. So you're going to do 20 as your factor tree. So 2 numbers that go into 20, circle if it's a prime number. 2 numbers that go into 10, circle when they're prime numbers, so we stop. We do the same with 35. 2 numbers that go into 35, they're both prime numbers, so there is actually only one answer to that bit. And then we're going to have our 2 circles for 20 and for 35. So 20 is here and 35 is here. And what goes in the middle is numbers that are in both. So there is a 5 in both. That goes in the middle. What's left in circles for 20 is a 2 and a 2. And what's left in circles for 35 is a 7. Now, to find the lowest common multiple, I take all of the numbers that are in my Venn diagram and I times them together. So I'm 2 times 2 times 5 times 7. And when I do that on my calculator, I get my answer of 140. As a little aside, if the question had said highest common factor, or HCF, then I only do the bit in the middle. So in this case, it would just be 5. If there were 2 numbers in the middle, you would times them together. Okay, now this question hasn't asked for that, but sometimes they do. Question 15. We've got a circle with radius 15 and we're asked to work out the area of the circle, and it is quite specific, correct to the nearest whole number. So area of the circle, they give you the formula, but pi times the radius squared. So it's going to be pi times 15 squared, which you are going to put into your calculator. And it's going to tell you it's 706.86 centimetres squared. So to the nearest whole number, because that is a 0.8, so it's over halfway, it's over the 0.5, we're going to round it up. So we have 707 centimetres squared. So that was 2 marks. You would have got 1 mark for getting the 706.86 and the second mark for getting the 707. So we've now got an exchange rate graph, conversion graph, between euros and dirham. We're asked to convert 200 dirhams to euros. So I'm actually going to go back and get my ruler. And if you're doing this, you should use a pencil in case you make a mistake. So there's my 200 dirhams that I'm going to draw across from. And then I'm going to draw down where that touches. Move my ruler out of the way. I'm not perfectly, I think I should actually be on that square there. And these are going up in ones, so 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47 is what I think the answer should be for that one. And then part B says the price of a jacket is 90 euros in France, of 400 dirham in the United Arab Emirates. Which is cheaper? So you've got to convert one way to the other. You don't have to do both. Well, we know that 200 dirhams is 47 euros. We found that in part A. So 200 dirhams is 47 euros. Let's call them D's. 200 dirhams is 47 euros. So 400 dirhams, that's twice as big, isn't it? It's times 2. So if we times that by 2, do 47 times 2, we get 94 euros, which is more expensive than how much it is in France. So the question says which is cheaper, so cheaper must be France because it was only 90. Right. This is where it is really important that you show you're working. It says show that, and you've got a fraction multiplication. If you pop that in your calculator, it will give you the answer. That's great, but they've already given you the answer. So in order to do a fraction multiplication, the first step is to turn mixed numbers to improper fractions. And then the second step is to multiply the numerators and multiply the denominators. So you multiply the tops, multiply the bottoms. So I've got 3 3/4 that I've got to turn into an improper fraction. And what we do is we take our whole number and we times it by our fraction part. And then we add on the number on the top. So I've got 3 times 4 for my yellow bits, for my whole number times what fraction we're talking about. And then I'm adding on the 3 that is already my numerator of my fraction. And that's still all over the same denominator of 4. So 3 times 4 is 12, plus 3 is 15 over 4. So my fraction becomes 15 over 4 multiplied by 7 over 9. And I'm going to times the 15 by 7 to get 105 over, and then 4 times 9 to get 36. And if in your calculator you put in your fraction as 105 over 36, it will simplify it to you as 35 over 12. And then if you use your shift button to turn it into a mixed number rather than an improper fraction, it will turn it to 2 11/12 for you. And that's sufficient working to get all of your marks. Question 18 is going to be tricky for me to do on the computer. But the bisector is where you cut it in half. And you need a pair of compasses. So you're going to take your compass and you can put one end on B, and set to any distance at all, you're going to put an arc on the line AB. You're then going to keep your compass set to exactly the same distance, and you're going to put an arc on AC. You're then going to pick your compass up, and you're now going to put your compass on the line where your arc drew, and you're going to put an arc somewhere up here. Keeping your compass exactly the same, you're going to pop it on this point where you cross your arc across the other line, and put an arc up here. And if you've done it properly with your compass, what you should find is that when you join that point, well, it's not done very well, but when you join where your arcs cross to the point there, it should cut that angle exactly in half. That's your kind of method. So question 19, simplify h to the power 7 times h squared. So with our indices, when we are multiplying, like we are here, then we are adding our powers together. So it's going to be h to the power of 7 plus 2. So that will be h to the power of 9. Part B, they're telling us that g equals c squared minus 4c. So we've got that expression, and we want to find the value of g when c is negative 5. So the key thing with the negative is to make sure we're putting everything in brackets. So we've got c, which is negative 5 squared, minus 4 times c, which is negative 5. And if you then put that into your calculator just like that, you will get an answer of 45. It is really, really, really vital that you have those brackets in here. It's especially important if you have a negative number, but if you just get used to putting them in all the time, then it won't matter. Part C is really tricky. Solve 5x minus 3 all over 4 equals 2x plus 3. We are going to do this cross multiplying thing, we've got to get rid of this this 4 on the bottom here, which is a divide by 4. So we're going to do that by timesing both sides by 4. When I times that left-hand side by 4, I get rid of the divide by 4. And when I times the right-hand side by 4, I get all of the right-hand side times by 4, which is a bracket then to multiply out. So if I look at this right-hand side, and we looked earlier in the paper at 2 ways of doing these. You can either do it with your grid, so 4 times 2x is 8x, 4 times 3 is 12, so I get 8x plus 12, or you can just do it with the sort of eyebrows that way, and you still get your 8x plus 12. So I've got 5x minus 3 here equals 8x plus 12. Now, I need to put my x's on the side that have the most x's. So at the moment I've got a 5x and an 8x, so I've got most x's on this side. So that means that I need to get rid of the x's on this side. So in order to get rid of 5x, I have to take 5x's away from both sides. So that leaves me with minus 3 on this side, because that minus sign there belongs to the 3. Yeah, that's one number. And then 8x's take away 5x's give me 3x's, and I've still got the plus 12. I then need to put everything that isn't an x on the other side. So I need to move my plus 12. To get rid of plus 12, I'm going to take 12 away from both sides. So I've then got minus 3, take away another 12, and you can use your calculator for that to get minus 15. And then I've still got my 3x on this side. And then if I've got 1x, so I've got 3x's and I want to find 1x, I've got to divide both sides by 3. So when I do minus 15 divided by 3, I get minus 5. So x will be minus 5. Question 20. We've got information about how long it takes students to get to school. And they've put it into groups of 10-minute intervals. And we're asked to find an estimate for the mean. And we're then told to give our answer correct to 1 decimal place. Now, when you have, this is called a grouped frequency table. When you have one of these, they will always ask you for an estimate because you don't know the exact numbers, but your method will always be the same. So the first thing I'm going to do is add some more columns onto my table. And the first column I'm going to add on is the midpoint. And the midpoint is the middle of those two numbers. So halfway between 0 and 10 is 5. And then halfway between 10 and 20 is 15. Halfway between 20 and 30 is 25. Halfway between 30 and 40 is 35. And halfway between 40 and 50 is 45. The next column that I'm going to put in is going to be the frequency times the midpoint. So that's this column here and the column that we've just put in, so this midpoint column here. I'm multiplying those two numbers together. So 4 times 5, 10 times 15, 15 times 25, 25 times 35, and 6 times 45. And I need my calculator to do some of those. That's 20, that's 150. And I now need my calculator because that's tricky to do in my head. So 15 times 25 is 375. 25 times 35 is 875, and 6 times 45 is 270. What I am then going to do is to add those numbers up. So these numbers here, I'm adding all of those numbers up. So again, that's a calculator job. So 20 plus 150 plus 375 plus 875 plus 270 gives me 1,690. So that 1,690 is how long all the students took in total to get to school. So to find the mean, I'd take that number, how long they all took, and divide it by how many students I've got, which it tells me back up here is 60. So I do that number divided by 60, and on my calculator I've got 28.166666. So to one decimal place, that will be 28.2. There will be a grouped frequency table question on one of your papers, and if you can learn how this method works, you will be able to get all of those marks. Yeah, that's 4 marks that are achievable. Question 21. In 2017, the population of a village was 7,500, and in 2019, the population was 8,265. The percentage increase is what we're asked to find. Percentage increase. So we looked at these the other day. The actual increase is how much it's gone up by. So it's gone up by the difference. I need to write those numbers properly. So 8,265 take away 7,500. So that is going to give me 765. That's how much the population has, how many extra people have gone and lived in that village. So the percentage increase is whatever the actual increase is divided by the original number of people. Yeah, so we talked about percentage change being the actual change divided by the original number and then times by 100 to turn it into a percentage. So here we times it by 100. So do 765 divided by 7,500 and times by 100 gives me 10.2%. Then part B, it tells me in a sale, the normal prices are reduced by 30%. And then the sale price of a t-shirt was 31.50 euros, and we're asked to work out the normal price. So this is one of those reverse ones because we're trying to find the normal price. So our 100% price, we don't know. But we know that when we take 30% off, the new price, which is going to be 70%, is 31.50 euros. So if you remember, to get back the other way, we said we needed to divide by whatever our percentage was. So in this case, it's divide by 70%. So you're literally going to pop in your calculator, 31.5 divided by 70%. I've typed that in wrong. Let me try that again. 31.5, that's better, divided by 70% gives me 45 as my answer. So originally the price of the t-shirt was 45 euros. But it's the fact that you're trying to find that 100% price, that normal price, that you need to spot. Question 22. Point A has coordinates -3, 11. Point B has coordinates 47b. And the midpoint of AB has coordinates A -19. And we're asked to find the values of A and B. Sounds really complicated. But the formula to find the midpoint of 2 points is that we add the two x coordinates together and divide them by 2, and we add the two y coordinates together and divide them by 2. So if we use that here, then our two x coordinates are -3 and 47. So we're going to do -3 plus 47 divided by 2. And then our two y coordinates are 11 and b. So we're going to do 11 plus b divided by 2. And we know that has to equal, they've told us the answer. The answer is a minus 19. So if we look at the x parts first, so let's just look at what's going on in x. We've got this has to equal this. So in other words, a is simply whatever you get when you do -3 plus 47 all divided by 2. And if you pop that into your calculator, you will discover that a is 22. If we then do the same thing for the b's, this is my expression for b, and this is my answer. This one's a bit trickier because we've got a bit of working backwards to do. But I know that 11 plus b all divided by 2 equals -19. So if I use the idea that we did with our equations before, and we're going to have to times both sides by 2 to get rid of that 2 on the bottom. So that leaves me with 11 plus b, and if you do -19 times 2 on your calculator, you get -38. And then to find the value for b, I've got to get rid of the 11, so I'm taking 11 away from both sides. So that will give me b equals, and then on your calculator you can do -38, take away 11, which will give you -49. So b comes out to be -49. Question 23. Pedro drove from Toulouse to Montpellier in 2 hours 40 minutes. So we've got a time of 2 hours and 42 minutes. He drove an average speed of 90 kilometers per hour. So his speed is 90 kilometers per hour. So we can use that information to find the distance, because we know, both from maths and from science, that speed is distance divided by time. So that's all that we know about Pedro. And then, this is Pedro's information here. Janine drove the same route, but her journey took her 3 hours. So we know her time is 3 hours, and we're asked to find her speed. So we want to know the speed. But we need to first of all find out how far it is using the information from Pedro. So if we go back to our speed, distance, time triangle for Pedro, and we're trying to find the distance. So we cover up the d, which is at the top, and that leaves me with speed times time here. So the distance between those two places is the speed, which is 90, times the time. Now the time has to be in hours. So we're going to turn it into a fraction, and we're going to say it's 2 hours and 42/60. Why have I done 42/60? Because it's 42 minutes and there are out of 60 minutes in an hour. So 42 out of 60 as a fraction is 42/60. And you can use your fraction button then on your calculator. You don't need to do anything else clever. So if you plug that into your calculator just as it is like that, then you are going to get 243. So the distance between these two places is 243 kilometers. And if we then do the same for Janine, and this time for Janine, we now know the distance and we know the time, and we're trying to find her speed because the distance is the same. So speed then is distance divided by time. So the speed is going to be 243 divided by, and her time was 3 hours, it tells us up there. So when we do that, we get 81 kilometers per hour. Okay, so this is a 4-mark question because you've got to do 2 parts. You've got to find some information from Pedro and then use that to answer the question about Janine. Right, more percentages now. So Harold bought an antique clock for £1,200. The clock increased in value by 8% per year. Find the value of the clock after 3 years. So it started at 1,200, it increased by 8%, and we want to know after 3 years. Now there is a quick way of doing it, but I'm going to show you the longer-winded but logical way to do it. So it starts at 1,200 and it increases by 8%. So if we find 8% of 1,200, using our calculator, we know how to do that. We get 96. So at the end of year 1, he has got 1,200, which he already had, plus 96 pounds in there. Oh, sorry, it's worth, because it's a clock. So it's worth 1,296 pounds. So in year 2, it's now 1,296 pounds, and it's going to times by 8% again. So if we do that, we get £103.68. So at the end of year 2, it's worth the £1,296 it was at the beginning, plus £133.60. Sorry, can't speak. Let me add that into my calculator. So that is £1,399.68. So that's 2 years, and we need to do 3 years. So 1 more year. So at the start of this last year, I've got extra numbers going on here. Let's try that again. It's £1,399.68 times 8%, which gives me £111 and then some decimals. Now I'm going to keep those decimals at the moment, even though they don't make sense in terms of money, until we get right to the end of our answer. So at the end of year 3, we have the amount of money it was at the start, worth at the start of the year, plus the amount of it's gone up by. And if you add that into your calculator, make sure I put the right numbers in. And remembering then that money can only have 2 decimal places. So what my calculator tells me is this number, but I only want 2 decimal places. And because that is a 4, which is the number that we don't round up, we're going to round it down. So I'm going to have £1,511.65 as my answer for that question. Question 25. They give us the formula here for pressure, and you can pop it into a triangle just the same as you can speed, distance and time. And the way you're going to know what goes on the top is where you've got the fraction here, you've got force on the top of the fraction, so force goes on the top of your triangle, and then the other 2, pressure and area, go in the other 2 bits, and it doesn't matter which way round they go. So we've got a box on a table. The face of the box in contact with the table is a square of side 1.5 meters. So we've got a box which is 1.5 by 1.5 meters. And it tells us that the pressure is 34.8 Newton meters squared. And we're asked to find the force. So the first thing we actually have to do is find the area of the square, because we don't know that yet. So we know that to find the area of a square, we just times the 2 sides together. So 1.5 times 1.5, which will be 2.25 meters squared. So then to find force, if we look at our triangle here, force is the one at the top. So that means we're going to times the other 2 bits together. So force is pressure, which they tell us in the question is 34.8, times the area, which is 2.25. So again, we reach for our calculator and we get 78.3 newtons as our answer. We're nearly at the end. I think it's this question and one more. Yes, nearly there. So Alex makes 80 cakes to sell. He makes chocolate cakes, lemon cakes and fruit cakes in the ratio 3 to 2 to 5. He sells all of the chocolate cakes, 3/4 of the lemon cakes and 7/8 of the fruit cakes. And he makes a load of profit. And we're asked to work out how much profit he makes. So there's a lot of steps to this. We don't know how many of each cake he made. And once we know, if we knew how many of each cake he made, we could work out how many he sold. So the first job is to find out how many of each cake he made. And that's where I'm going to use my ratio. So I'm going to use this information that I've got chocolate cakes, lemon cakes and fruit cakes. And we've got 80 cakes altogether. So sharing in a ratio. So I'm going to add the parts of my ratio together. So 3 plus 2 plus 5 gives me 10. And then I take how many cakes he made in total and divide it by that 10, which gives me 8. So each part of the ratio is 8. So then to find how many of each type of cake he made, chocolate cakes, he made 3 times 8 because there's 3 in the ratio. Lemon cakes he made 2 times 8 because there's 2 in the ratio. And fruit cakes he made 5 times 8 because there's 5 in the ratio. So that gives me 24 chocolate ones, 16 lemon ones and 40 fruit cakes. So we then need to look at this part here where it's telling us how many he sold of each cake. So he sold all of the chocolate cakes. So we know he sold 24 chocolate cakes. He sold 3/4 of the lemon cakes. So he made 16 lemon cakes. So we need to find 3/4 of 16, which if you plug that into your calculator will give you 12. And then he sold 7/8 of the fruit cakes. So 7/8 times 40. Again, if you put that in your calculator, you'll get an answer of 25. So we know that he sold 24 chocolate cakes, 12 lemon cakes, and 35 fruit cakes. We know from this table here, this is a really long-winded question, we know how much profit he made per type of cake. So for his chocolate cakes, he sold 24 of them, and for each chocolate cake, he made £2 profit. So 24 times 2 means he made £48 profit. For the lemon cakes, he sold 12 of them, and for each lemon cake, he made £1.70 profit. So if we do 12 times 1, sorry, it helps if I press the right buttons on my calculator again. If we do 12 times £1.70, we get £20.40. And then for the fruit cakes, we know he sold 35 of them, and the fruit cakes have a profit of £2.40. So if we do 35 times £2.40, we get 84. So gosh, he made a lot of profit on the fruit cakes, although he did sell most of those. So the question, this is where we have to be really careful, talked about total profit. So we just have to add those numbers together. So we're going to do 48, add £20.40, add 84, add £20.40, which gives me £152.40. There's a lot to that question, that's why it's 5 marks. But there are lots of bits that you can do. You just take it through one step at a time. Right, last question. The diagram shows a regular octagon. Octagon, 8 sides. You can actually count them in this one. Oh, sorry, because they've given you a picture, but we do need to know that. We are asked to work out the size of angle HAC. So HAC, you start at H, you go to A, and you go to C. And it's the angle that you've turned through. So it's this angle in here between those two lines that you're trying to find. Now we're going to have to do this in 2 stages. The first thing that we're going to need to find out is, I'm going to get rid of those for a minute. First thing we're going to need to find out is what this whole angle is here. So the inside angle of the octagon, what's that whole big angle? Okay. And we have a formula to work out angles inside a regular polygon like this. And the sum of the interior or the inside angles is the number of sides, take away 2, and then times by 180. So in this case, we've got 8 sides, and we're going to take away 2, and then we're going to times that by 180. So 6 times 180 gives me 1080. So that's how much all of these angles add up to. Okay, all of those. Now, if we want to know what one of them is, we need to count how many angles we've got. But I've got 8 sides, so I've got 8 angles. So each angle is 1080 divided by 8, which is 135 degrees. So that yellow angle is 135 degrees, but as is this pink angle here, as is this pink angle over here, and all of the others. Yeah, they're all 135. But particularly interested in this one at B, because hopefully you might be able to see that I've got a triangle here that goes from A to B to C, and then along that line here. And that triangle is an isosceles triangle because that side and that side are the same, because they're both sides of the octagon. Now, what we know about isosceles triangles is that if they have 2 sides the same, they also have 2 angles the same. So this little angle here and this little angle here are the same. Now, we know that the angles in a triangle add to 180. And in that little triangle that we've just drawn, we know that the pink bit is 135. So to find what those other angles are, we can do 180, take away 135, which gives me 45, and then I can halve them, because there's 2 of them and we know they're the same, which gives me 22.5 degrees. So each of these angles in here, that one and that one, are both 22.5 degrees. So, to find the bit that I actually want to know about, which is this bit here that I'm colouring in, that's the yellow angle, so the whole 135, take away the bit that we've just worked out to be 22.5. So the angle that we're interested in, which was HAC, is 135, take away 22.5, which gives you 112.5 degrees, because it's that whole angle in the octagon, take away that little bit there. So that's our way through the whole paper. Don't try and watch it in one go, but hopefully you can keep coming back to bits of it to work out what you need to do to help when you've got a question that you haven't been able to do.